Hey Earthers, Nikki here, and welcome to my Expanse tier ranking, which is my last Expanse video. And if by some miracle I get this video edited and posted before midnight, happy Pi Day. If not, it's an even more special day in that it's my cat Simmy's 10th birthday. So happy birthday, Simmy. And in the celebratory spirit, I've decided to test out a cocktail from the Expanse cocktail project. I've linked the project below. There's like over 100 cocktails included. I decided to try out the Scopuli because the distress signal from the Scopuli really set the whole Expanse adventure in motion. So you grab a comforting beverage, I'll go make mine, and then we'll be right back for the tier ranking. Cheers. Yes, this is certainly a cocktail. All right, so before I get into my ranking, let's introduce the tiers. And the way that I designed the tiers is each tier's category theme is a different type of propulsion system that we encounter in the Expanse. So the lowest tier is tea kettle. Not that kind. It's the steam that is ejected from the thrusters so that you can actually do some maneuvering without having the fusion drive leave its signature behind. And tea kettle was laying in the Navy, so we learn about it from Holden's perspective. And tea kettle has a number of different uses. So like a rock hopper runs on tea kettle, or like the Canterbury's little passenger carrier, the Knight. Okay, so it does have a fusion torch, but in close proximity to the Canterbury, it only runs tea kettle whenever a ship does a flip and burn. Okay, doing the flip, they're doing tea kettle. Okay, next up is slingshot. Slingshotting is an illegal belter sport, and it's extremely dangerous. The slingshotters ride in these rickety ships that run on pellets, and there's only enough fuel pellets to like make their trip out and back, like barely. And the thing is, there's lots of physics involved in calculating a slingshot run because you're also using the gravity from like a planetary body to slingshot you or increase your velocity to propel you as well. So we got fuel pellets and gravity for slingshotting. Okay, for the middle tier, we have the Epstein drive, and this is a fusion reactor. And as Ty Frank and Daniel Abraham have said, this type of reactor works really well, efficiently. That's all the explanation we get. Solomon Epstein was the inventor of the Epstein drive, and it gave humanity the planets, but not the stars. So most ships that we encounter in the Expanse have an Epstein drive, like the Rocinante, for example. Okay, second tier from the top is magnetar antimatter. So this is also fusion powered, except that it's specifically beam target fusion. And so these antimatter spheres are apparently 100% converted from antimatter to energy, and it powers these beams that are used for the fusion reaction. And for both the fusion and the antimatter, you need a very strong magnetic field for this to work. Okay, so this is a really high tech here, okay? Maybe beyond human tech. I won't say anything more than that. And then top tier, we have the alien propulsion. I didn't have another word for it. The alien propulsion has no drive signature. It has no visible thrusting. Really, the hypothesis is that it uses decoupled inertia to work, but we really have no idea how it works. We're just like breaking space-time barriers with it. So that is the highest propulsion tier. Keep in mind that this is all relative, and by no means, as far as the Expanse series goes, is bottom tier an F. The bottom tier is like a B-. Okay, so we're going from like B- to like maybe like A or A+ here. We have 17 books, novellas, and short stories to get through today. So I'll try to keep it brief on each one. If you want a longer description of each, please check out my review videos. I have done a review on all of these. So let's get to it. To begin with, we have the debut novel, Leviathan Wakes. And in Leviathan Wakes, this is our noir detective story in which we get two major POVs. When I say the number of POVs, I'm gonna like leave out the prologue and epilogue POVs. So we get Arthur, Navy defector James Holden, and we get the belter from Ceres Station, Detective Joe Miller. And I really like that this first book focused on these two perspectives that really contrasted and complemented each other well. I mean, the ethical philosophies of each character were very different, especially when it came to like information and the sharing of information and who should have access to that and who should not. Also, as far as when is it okay to kill? We have these very different, like this young, idealistic James Holden and this more wise Detective Miller who is like a little disenchanted by the world. And Leviathan Wakes is an exciting debut novel. It's cinematic, there's tons of action, there's tons of suspense, there's tons of twists and turns. And if I had not seen the TV series first, this would have absolutely blown me away. I would have been hooked, I would have been riveted. And the thing is, the way these are written, especially like from Holden's perspective, it's almost like a screenplay in that you just kind of see a lot of what is going on, but there's not a lot of internal monologue, internal character building as far as Holden is concerned. Miller, on the other hand, he does have a little more deep internal thoughts going on. Don't get me wrong, I love Holden's personality. It's just that when I read, I really like my characters to be more introspective. I get more out of it that way. Otherwise, from watching the TV series, I really knew what was going to happen. This translated like so well to screen. Solid debut novel, solid prose. I thought the writing on Eros near the end of the novel, the last few chapters, was just absolutely breathtaking, absolutely beautiful. No, I'm not referring to the vomit zombies, past the vomit zombies, but I really loved the way the end was written. So really, I think Leviathan Wakes makes a fantastic measuring stick. Okay, so I'm going to normalize the rest of the books really against Leviathan Wakes. So this is solid, right in the center, Epstein Drive. So book 2 is Caliban's War, and this is the political thriller. And I know a lot of people put this book up near the top, up near their favorites, and it really did not do it for me. We had 4 POVs. I liked all the POVs. We had Holden, we had the Martian Marine, Bobby Draper, we had Arthur, assistant to the undersecretary, Avasarala. We had the botanist, Praxidike Meng from Ganymede. They were all very different characters, and I didn't dislike any of them, but I don't think I absolutely loved and was obsessed with any of the POVs. I probably liked reading Meng the best, just because I thought the way that he analyzed the world around him was unique to what we had seen so far as a scientist, and that he was also like thinking about his family a lot, and he seemed a little deeper. Avasarala was pretty fun to read as well, and I know Bobby is like a badass, and she really does grow on me, and she's like this lovable badass. Like, she's very gentle, like a gentle giant almost. Her POV did not stand out to me in this book, although I do love her character overall in the series. And our villain is Jules Pierre Mao, and I thought that we could have gotten more from him. He could have been a much better villain than he was. He really took a back burner to all the other stuff that was going on, which was fine, but I think that was a bit of a weakness in this book. And there was a lot of action, which also I think too much action does not translate to the page really well. It translates to the screen really well, and like, it was phenomenal in the TV series. So I didn't feel like this book added that much for me, and the prose was on par with book 1. And at this point, when I wasn't like entirely gripped by Caliban's war, I was like, oh no, like, am I going to be able to get through the entire series? Especially since at that point, I had already seen the first 5 seasons of the TV show. So this is going to be in the slingshot tier. So not at the very bottom. I didn't dislike it. Like I said, it was probably like a B. I just didn't get too much more added through the reading experience than kind of what I already saw. And I thought the politics were integrated better by the time everything was revised for the TV series, honestly. Installment number 2.5 is Gods of Risk, and this is a novella. So the reason that you should read this novella is if you want to learn more about Mars, the culture of Mars, and also you get the sense in this novella that Mars civilization is in decline. Okay, well, it's at the beginning of decline. So the main POV, the POV that you get from this novella is Bobby's nephew, David. So you do get a little Bobby. Unfortunately, not enough Bobby. I do wish there was more Bobby in this novella because, once again, in the TV series, her character really gets built up more from her actions in the novella and some things going on with her personal life. And like her few things that she did in this novella did make me feel for her more, did make me like her more and miss her. And it did develop her character, what she went through. But Gods of Risk did have a YA feel for it. It was just all right to me. And so this is going to be bottom tier tea kettle. Yeah, sorry. Book 3 is Abaddon's Gate, and this is what got me committed to the Expanse series. And Holden's really the consistent storyline that we follow through. And in Abaddon's Gate, I finally felt like he got some depth. He was starting to become the Holden I wanted him to be, the Holden that I kind of picked up this series to read more about. We have Holden and the rest of the Rocinante crew. We open up with them on Ceres Station, and I really did enjoy returning to Ceres Station, especially with all the series that we got in book 1. And they were kind of just like blowing off some steam, relaxing, and it was just such a nice moment. I really loved the beginning. And Abaddon's Gate is our ghost story. So the ghost story does come in Holden's perspective. So that, I think, deepens him a little too, and it made me really excited to read his chapters. So not only do we have that ghost story element, we also have this documentary crew that ends up following around the Rocinante crew. So I thought that was a lot of fun. And then for our other perspectives, we have the Dr. Reverend Anna Volovodov, and she is from Earth, but she is a pastor on Europa. And I thought that it was really smart of James S.A. Corey to include a religious figure in this book. They put her on board this ship to investigate this new alien artifact with other religious figures and artists and musicians and writers, and I just thought it just made so much sense that they would all be together trying to like really conceptualize what this larger than humanity thing was that was happening. We also get Melba, or Clarissa Mao, who's Jules Pierre Mao's daughter, and the thing is, like, her character does not translate too well to the screen because she has a lot going on inside. So I was pleasantly surprised by her character in this book, and I enjoyed reading her perspective. And then lastly, we get Bull, who is someone you don't see in the TV series at all. He is such a tragic figure. I did feel for his character. I liked reading his storyline as well, and everything that was going on the Behemoth, which, you know, becomes Medina Station. I loved Abaddon's Gate. I thought the prose was really just like up a notch from the first 2 books. I thought Ty Frank and Daniel Abraham really hit their stride with the prose in Abaddon's Gate. And Abaddon's Gate is one of those books that I think I could reread again and again and again and keep getting something out of, which just makes for good literature. Whereas I was kind of impatient in Leviathan Wakes and Caliban's War because they're the kind of books that you read it for the suspense, for finding out what happens, and the kind of like page turning, like what's next, what's next, which isn't as exciting the second go around, which is like why I think it was a little more challenging for me to get through those books. And if you're a big fan of the TV series, you might expect to see Drummer and Ashford in Abaddon's Gate. So you do get some Ashford, and I don't remember if you get like 1 second of Drummer in this book or if that's a later book. One of my favorite episodes is season 3, episode 11, Fallen World, with that just heart-wrenching scene between Ashford and Drummer, and it's so crazy that was just for the TV screen. That was not in the book. So that might bum you out. That's not in there at all. So really, you do start to diverge quite a bit in book 3, between book 3 and the TV series. Abaddon's Gate is Magnetar Antimatter, and that is a mouthful. I wasn't really thinking about that when I made that tier, but I didn't know how else to put it. Number 3.5 is another novella. So this is The Vital Abyss, and this was my favorite novella, and it's the only one that we get from first person. The novellas were all kind of very different in style, especially from the main books. In The Vital Abyss, you get the perspective of Paolo Cortazar, who is a nanoscientist from Earth. I think he was from Brazil originally. And he had his empathy removed. So we're getting first person from a sociopath. You get to find out what happened to that whole protomolecule research team from Toth Station. So you get their fates, and you get Cortazar's backstory, and he grew up on Basic on Earth. So you get to see what life was like on Earth and how hard it was and how few opportunities there really were down the gravity well. And so Vital Abyss, great novella. I love the moral dialogue around research ethics. So this is also Magnetar Antimatter. Onward! Book 4 is Cibola Burn, and Cibola Burn takes place on a whole new planet somewhere. The new planet is called New Terra. So appropriately, the style of Cibola Burn is a Western, right? Since we have a new settlement. And the thing is, I'm not usually a big fan of Westerns. When I take a step back, it was a good story. I just think it could have been executed better, because what killed it for me were the POVs that we got. So the one POV that I looked forward to reading was, of course, James Holden, who's really our consistent thread through the whole series. Then otherwise, we get the scientist Alvi. Alvi was really only palatable when she was thinking about science or problem solving. So her chapters were okay. Otherwise, we have Bazia, who we first met in Caliban's War, and he was just really whiny and pathetic and annoying. Our last POV was Havelock. Havelock was Detective Miller's former partner in the Star Helix Corporation, and kind of the action stuff that was going on with him was pretty exciting, but otherwise he was just bland, and we didn't get that much of the Rocinante crew in this book, and it was a hard one for me to get through, honestly. The climax was like, it could have been executed better, and the ending was a little messy, and it was hard to tell at times like exactly what was going on, which I know when there's like alien stuff involved, it's a little hard to follow. But the one, like, I thought pretty good thing in Cibola Burn, which I think a lot of people don't really agree with me on, is I thought that Murtry made for a fantastic, horrible villain. Like, he's exactly who you would get as a villain in a Western. His character was absolutely frustrating. He reminded me of a shark, but Murtry thrives on the lawlessness of the new frontier. So I thought that was very realistic, kind of the stuff that was going on with him, and how he was trying to really run everything. And season 4 in the TV show was actually like one of my favorite seasons. I was like hooked, like, oh wow, how are they gonna get out of all this? Unfortunately, in book form, it's gonna be Tea Kettle. Sorry, Cibola Burn. So the 9 main books are really set up like 3 trilogies. So in the first trilogy, you get the events that lead to the expanse, right? Where humanity can expand to the stars. In the second trilogy, you get the expanse itself, okay? And some of like the different like factions that are forming and the tensions that are brewing. And then in the last trilogy, I don't even know how to explain the last trilogy other than, okay, the last book is called Leviathan Falls. You really get these great powers rising. Got to learn more about the architects and the dark gods. I'm gonna leave that there, not say anything else. The prequels, I think you probably could fittingly read right after the first trilogy, though it might be a little bit much reading like the Vital Abyss and then the 3 prequels, or the 3 prequels then the Vital Abyss. So I personally read the prequels after Cibola Burn, and I thought they fit in great there. So let's get into those. The first one is one of 2 short stories in the series, and that is Drive. And Drive is a fantastic short story. It's like a master class of a short story. And it's about how Martian Solomon Epstein invented the Epstein drive. And really, it was so well done. If you read any of these, just please read Drive. It's quick, it's a short story. Do it. So this is gonna be the first to make it to Alien Propulsion. So next up is The Churn, and I'm going through these prequels in the order that they kind of took place in leading up to Leviathan Wakes. So we got Drive first, now we have The Churn. The Churn is a novella, it takes place in Baltimore, Maryland, and we get the backstory of Amos Burton. We get to see how corrupted Earth is and how sort of the underbelly of society runs, and how you get this churn, this kind of refreshing periodically of the big players and who's in power. The Churn was set like a little bit further back than some of the other novellas, and I had a good time reading it. I really did. Some things happen. It's a pretty messed up story. It gives you a better sense of kind of why Amos is the way that he is. So overall, solid novella, and I would place this in the Epstein Drive tier. Okay, the last of the prequels is another short story. This is The Butcher of Anderson Station. And so if Fred Johnson is a character that you really like and you want to know his backstory and you want to know how he got involved with the OPA, how Anderson Dawes recruited him, then read Butcher of Anderson Station. There's not a lot in it that really stuck out to me. It's quick. It's not the master class of a short story that Drive was, to me at least. I'd place this in the Slingshot tier. Okay, we are halfway there, and this brings me to Book 5, Nemesis Games, and you might wonder, like, okay, why didn't I give up after Cibola Burn? Well, I knew that in Nemesis Games, the 4 POVs we got were the Rocinante crew members, which I really thought we'd be getting more of them the entire time. So we get, of course, Holden, we get Amos, Naomi, and Alex. Definitely read The Churn before Nemesis Games and read The Butcher of Anderson Station before Nemesis Games. Seriously. So I was really looking forward to this book. The crew members get separated, so you get to see kind of their separate stories. You finally get Naomi's backstory, and I love that all the characters just feel so different from each other, just how they perceive the world, how really Naomi notices aesthetics and how she's feeling. She's more in touch with her environment. Whereas Amos is always trying to like interpret motives or prepare for conflict. He's like looking at those corners, right? That Miller's always talking about, right? Shadows and corners, or doorways and corners, something like that. And we're starting to get the buildup of the Free Navy. So overall, I did enjoy Nemesis Games. I liked reading all the Roci crew members' perspectives because I did feel really committed to them. So I would put this solidly middle tier Epstein Drive category. Book 6, the conclusion to this middle trilogy. And holy POVs, Babylon's Ashes. There were like 19 POVs, way too many. And I get why there were that many POVs, to kind of show a broader scope of all the little conflicts and events that were taking place, to bring everything together for the ultimate climax and resolution and little cliffhanger, okay, for the later trilogy, like our little introduction to the Dark Gods, maybe. I thought where it went was great. Gosh, it was just so much jumping around. I really think the POVs probably could have been like halved, and we would have gotten a little more into each one. Like, give me a little more Michio. I liked Michio. This is going to be in the slingshot tier for me. But if you really like action and like really just dipping into a ton of characters, hey, it might rank differently for you, because like I know everyone's tastes are super different. And the nice thing about The Expanse is every novel is written in a different style. My least favorite might be your favorite. Number 6.5. Here's another novella, and you might just think like, oh, Strange Dogs. It sounds goofy, I'm going to skip it. Do not skip this one. If you're gonna not skip any of them, this is the one not to skip. I think it's the one that kind of pays off the most and becomes really important in the last trilogy. So in Strange Dogs, we get to see another planet, we get to see Laconia, and there was, of course, an original research scientist settlement, and there's more military people moving in. So we're starting to see the rise of the military force on Laconia. Okay, and there's some other alien stuff in Strange Dogs too, which I enjoy the alien stuff. Okay, like that really fascinates me, and I was always looking forward to that in this series. Okay, and we get more and more of it as the series goes on. We get kind of like the most of it, I think, in like the first trilogy and the last trilogy. There's really more like political and battle conflicts in that middle trilogy, which like, I mean, God, there was kind of a lot of alien stuff in Cibola Burn, but anyway, moving on. For me, Strange Dogs makes it into the Epstein Drive tier. Last trilogy, Persepolis Rising. And so now we have a 30-year time skip. So this is 30 years after Babylon's ashes. Thank goodness, no more insane numbers of POVs. We're settling down on that. As kind of like one category of POV, we really have the kind of slightly aged Rocinante crew members. And then we have Santiago Singh, who is from Laconia. So we get a little bit of him in Strange Dogs. And lastly, finally, so late in the series, Kamina Drummer. There she is. Okay, so I didn't love Singh's POV, but I was fine with the other ones, okay? And we kind of bounce around between the various Rocinante crew members. Some of them are separated, maybe for part of it, or all of it. I don't know, not gonna tell you. In Persepolis Rising, there is a lot of time, like Babylon's Ashes, really devoted to setup, and I could have done without some of the intricacies with the setup, the minutia of it, but we are starting to see the rise of the Laconian Empire, and I really loved the ending of Persepolis Rising. I cried, I got really worried, and we were left on, I'll just say it, a cliffhanger. Persepolis Rising is going to be placed in the slingshot tier just because like the ending for me, and there was one fantastic chapter kind of like nearish the ending, latter half of the book. It didn't save it for me. 7.5 is a novella, Auberon, and this novella is beautifully written. This is meant to be a crime story. Auberon is the most populous and most wealthy system outside of Sol System. And the thing is, we have the rise of the Laconian Empire, and we're starting to get a sense how strong that empire's reach is, because the extent of that empire's reach really depends on people's commitment to the ideology, because it's really hard to watch and keep control that far off. That's really the focus of that novella, and we also get to revisit with another character from an earlier novella. So I think the novellas all paid off. Like, I'm so happy I read all of them. They're super quick reads. Like, the longest one is probably like a couple hour read. I'd say don't skip them. And now they're all compiled in Memories Legion. Personally, even though it was beautifully written, Auberon wasn't one of my favorite novellas. I'm gonna put it right in that middle Epstein Drive tier. We're almost done. Book number 8, Tiamat's Wrath. Okay, this was unabashedly my favorite book in the entire series. I was hooked. I could not put it down, and it gripped me. It gripped me. It made my jaw drop. It made me cry. It did all the things. This was like my reward for sticking with the series the way that I did. Because like looking, while I was reading Tiamat, I'm like just thinking like, this is so astonishing. What Ty Frank and Daniel Abraham created with The Expanse, how much they accomplished in a decade. Just between like getting the books done and the TV series and how it all came together. Like I was like reading this, like this is something great. This is something big. And I got so into Tiamat's. And it was also after a little bit of a hiatus from reading The Expanse. So I'm not going to tell you the POVs. I don't want to like spoil things at this point. I'm just going to say it made me so happy I stuck with it. And also what I really appreciated in this book was like there wasn't a drawn out battle at the end. It was simplified. It was expedited because sometimes it's just like, oh, come on, how does it resolve? And I thought it was efficiently done. I know that there's kind of some complaints floating around out there like, oh, come on, it wasn't hard enough. I think the puzzle pieces were put into place adequately for the ending to be what it was, and I appreciated it. This makes it into the Alien Propulsion tier. Okay, last novel, book 9, Leviathan Falls. And so while I thought the ending of Leviathan Falls was absolutely perfect, I thought it was a worthy ending to the whole series. It really solidified one of the characters as like my favorite character of the series. But there were a couple of POVs in Leviathan Falls that I didn't care so much for. There were a couple POVs in Leviathan Falls that I did not enjoy as much as all the POVs we got in Tiamat's. And so while I thought this was an excellent conclusion to the series, I would place this in the Magnetar Antimatter tier. So close to the top. I mean, it's in the same tier as Abaddon's Gate, which was also one of my favorite books. But I'm going for kind of a normal distribution here, okay? So I gotta be really, really picky about what I put in the top tier. Number 9.5 is novella, The Sins of Our Fathers, that takes place after Leviathan Falls. And if you're interested in learning what became of Naomi's son, definitely read this. But otherwise, I thought it was kind of meh. I was satisfied with the ending of Leviathan Falls, and so I was feeling pretty good about the series, and it didn't add that much for me, except for it did tie up a couple of loose ends. So I would place Tea Kettle once again. If you want more, you can have more. Just check out my Expanse playlist, please. Otherwise, please subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.